Dans une minute, we'll start the meeting in 1 minute. If members of council could take their seats. Merci. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City Council meeting of the 6th of November 2019. Bienvenue à la réunion du Conseil pour le 6 novembre 2019. For those who are able to, please rise for a moment of personal reflection and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem. And if you could remain standing, and our colleague, Councillor Menard, will introduce our very special guest who is going to perform our national anthem.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for being here. I just before we start wanted to acknowledge the land we're gathered on is unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I'm very happy to welcome Carly DeSano today, who has been singing and performing since she was a child growing up in Sault Ste. Marie and currently residing in Capital Ward. A vocal performance graduate from the University of Ottawa, Carly has established a place for herself as a lyric soprano in Ottawa's music scene. From musical theatre, choirs, opera, and oratorio, to more recently jazz and old pop tunes, she continues to explore different musical interests and share her music as she goes. Carly.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, thank you for that beautiful rendition of our national anthem. It's an honor to invite Dr. Maud Jamal Al-Sharif to the podium for this meeting's Mayor's City Builder Award. J'invite Jamal à monter sur le podium pour la remise de prix.
I'd like to invite Mr. Maud Jamal Al-Sharif.
Councillor Carol Ann Meehan. Welcome, Jamal. Nice to have you here and your wife. Welcome. And I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Jamal's family and friends. He is being honored for his outstanding volunteerism, for his work with refugees in Ottawa, and for his service to the community. He is recognized for embracing Canada's multiculturalism, for promoting peace and harmony, and for building connections across communities. Jamal works closely with Canadians from all backgrounds and has been very active with a group of mostly Syrian refugees here in Ottawa. He's done so much to help others in the community, including his Children for Peace initiative with Syrian refugee children, creating and selling paintings to raise money for the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, or as we know it, CHEO. As an immigrant to Canada, he has helped newcomers establish themselves and feel welcome, and he has dedicated himself to helping children with from war-torn countries, with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Jamil is a super volunteer in the community who contributes to a very long list of charities and organizations in our city. He volunteers yearly for the Terry Fox Run, the Army Run, the Zombie Run for Humanity, the Ottawa Run for Palestine. You run a lot, don't you, Jamil?
I volunteer for
You volunteer, okay. As well as the Community Soccer Cup and the Shepherds of Good Hope. He also finds time to volunteer with many festivals in Ottawa that celebrate our diversity. The Ottawa Asian Fest, South Asian Fest, Chinese New Year Gala, Indian Festival, Festival Japan, Palestinian Festival, Capital Ukrainian Festival, and the Latin American Festival. Jamil is the founder and president of Humans for Peace, institution and organization that seeks to end wars around the globe. He was recently recognized as one of RBC's top 25 Canadian Immigrant Award winners for 2019, which is a national competition, so you should be doubly proud of that accomplishment. And on September 6th, he received the Governor General's Sovereign Medal for volunteers in recognition of his many contributions. Jamil also finds time to create videos in Arabic about the City of Ottawa as a way of promoting the city to tourists and newcomers. These can be viewed on his YouTube channel, Jamil Al-Sharif. With his passion for civic engagement, his amazing volunteer skills, Jamil continues to motivate and inspire others. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of your councillor and all members of council, Jamil, to thank you for your contributions. J'aimerais saisir cette occasion pour remercier Jamel de ses
So I'd like to thank Jamal for his many contributions to the city.
With the Mayor's City Builder Award. Congratulations. Over here. We're gonna get the medal. Come on up here, Jamel.
I don't have much to say. It's been said. I would like to thank everybody for this award and counting me as a city community builder. Thank you for making me believe that the community comes stronger when it comes to unity. I'm not receiving an award today, but I'm receiving courage. I'm not receiving an appreciation. I'm receiving support. Today, I'm thankful for everybody who helped me to be who am I. Every achievement happened in my life. It's because those people being in my life, my family, my friends, my colleagues, even those people who saying hi in the streets, because they're giving me hope for tomorrow. My wife, my son, I would like to thank them deeply because they never ever questions my volunteer. This time I spent outside, could be there, but they always encourage me to go and do more, travel around and help others. This also award belonged to the family of Human for Peace, the organization we founded, because everybody believes and work for nothing. It's volunteering and helping others. Lately, when I was traveling from Australia on my last volunteer trip, I caught a plane, Air Canada 34, from Sydney to Toronto. It was 20 hours flight, was boring, so I tried to look into the entertainment screen around, and I found a city guide. So I was happy to look into that, looking around the world, and I found Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, New York, Tokyo, Beijing, but where is my Ottawa? I really was disappointed, and I thought, if it's not on Air Canada flight, where is my capital? Where is my city? So I started an idea called Ottawa 365, which is promoting or making 365 videos in different languages. So far we started in Arabic. We have 128 videos so far about things you can do in Ottawa. Ottawa is not a boring city. It's a lovely city. There are people, there are a lot of things to do. It's even more than Toronto. I'm proud of Ottawa. Yes, I'm not a professional video photographer. Yes, I'm not a professional video editor. I do not have a lot of support and sponsors except Tim Tierney, and I would like to thank him for his generous support for us. I believe in this project because I believe in Ottawa. I believe in its people, and I believe it's one of the best places you can come and live in. So I do have sometimes to do that, and I will do it because I committed to finish this project. And I will end by a quote that you have never, ever underestimate the job of a volunteer. The Noah Art was built by volunteer, and the Titanic was built by professionals. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jamal, and we got to get you connected with Ottawa tourism. You're a great booster for our city. We really appreciate all the work you do in the community. A roll call, please, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Luloff.
Ici.
Councillor Dudas.
Ici.
Councillor Harder. Councillor Suds.
Here.
Councillor El-Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Ici.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Here.
Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans. Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseil Fleury.
Ici.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Conseil Cloutier.
Présent.
Conseil Blais.
Présent.
Councillor DeRose.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan.
Here.
Councillor Hubley. Mayor Watson.
Ici.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Merci. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès verbaux pour le 23 octobre 2019. Carried. Declaration of interest, including those originally rising from prior meetings. Déclaration d'intérêt. Councillor Shirelli.
Whereas subsection 5(3) of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act provides that where the interests of a member has not been disclosed by reason of a member's absence from a meeting at which the matter was considered, the member shall disclose the interest at the first meeting of council attended by the member. I, Councillor Rick Shirelli, declare a direct pecuniary interest in the following matters considered by City Council. Motions 20/3 and 20/4 considered by City Council on September 25th, 2019, and motions 22.7 considered by City Council on October 23rd, 2019, and notice of which was given on October 9th, 2019, as they pertain to my request for an authorized medical absence pursuant to subsection 259 1C of the Municipal Act 2001.
Are there any other conflicts of interest? Communications as presented. Regrets. Councillor Deans, see motion 20-1 of September 25th, 2019. And Councillor Jan Harder has advised that she would be absent from the City Council meeting of the 6th of November. Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Today we table the draft 2020 budget for public input, and at the same time we're also considering the new term of council priorities. These are two of the most important discussions we as a city have each term of council. C'est la discussion le plus important que nous avons à chaque année. Over the last few weeks, I have had the pleasure of attending various ward consultations, and I've heard from residents regarding their vision for their city and their budget priorities. Residents are realistic about the city's fiscal capacity, and they know we must set a limit to the number of priorities we can achieve, and they want us to live within our means and keep our city affordable. In other words, if we have 100 priorities, we really have no priorities. We live in a city with a booming economy, with an unprecedented level of low unemployment, an abundance of opportunity with strong investment and smart growth. As a local government, it is incumbent on us to help to strive to include everybody in that prosperity.
We must make sure that all residents can benefit from this wealth in the community.
We're bringing forward a budget for 2020 that delivers on key commitments, including reducing our infrastructure gap by boosting our spending on roads, sidewalks, and critical infrastructure, providing more affordable housing, investing in transit and LRT to serve our growing population, improve the core services people count on, like drinking water and expanding our transit system, maintaining our cycling and pathway infrastructure to improve active mobility and safety, building a strong and sustainable economy that supports our local job market and celebrates our regional economic diversity, making our communities safer and more resilient, keeping our tax rate affordable for all, especially low-income residents. In 2020, we are putting forward a budget that addresses citywide priorities with a tax rate of 3% with an additional 1.5% for growth, for a total operating budget of $3.76 billion. When combined with fares and revenues, this represents a $136.8 million increase over 2019. Budget 2020 also includes over $813 million for capital projects, which, when added to the capital spend on Stage 2 LRT, equals $1.6 billion.
Over the next year, we'll have several talks on the future of our city.
The 2020 budget and the term of council priorities that will be tabled today is just the beginning of a much broader discussion we will be having with our residents on our official plan, transportation master plan, infrastructure master plan, and the development charge bylaw. These plans will be strengthened by hearing from residents about their vision and priorities for the future. The choices we make today and through these upcoming discussions will set the path to what we want our city to look like in 10, 20, 30, even 50 years. As we review the details of the budget document with revenue tables and pie charts, we must remember that these discussions are about. They're always about our residents. People like small business owner Mike from Euphoria Salon, Richmond Road, who recently renovated his patio to host 3 pop-up food entrepreneurs. The over 9,500 people who have given their time volunteering through Volunteer Ottawa, and we saw that certainly during the floods and the tornadoes. The 6,256 new immigrants who have settled in Ottawa each and every year. The more than 35% of new jobs in Ottawa that are generated by small businesses, which include over 49,000 jobs that are being created in Ottawa just since the beginning of this year. The 33,323 construction workers building our city and over 789 construction projects currently underway. The 100,950 full-time college and university students who call Ottawa home. The families that are putting down roots with a booming number of housing starts in 2019, and the over 5 million rides on our LRT system in just 7 weeks. These discussions must also be about the kind of communities we want to live in. Nous devons penser à quel genre de communauté nous voulons pour nos résidents. Residents have told us they want affordable communities, a sustainable economy and environment that works for everyone, well-maintained roads and transit that connects to employment, infrastructure that is in good repair, and service to support those most in need. These are the priorities that we have heard through our consultation efforts, and these are the priorities that are informing our choices and our budget decisions. Although our city is firing on all cylinders, it is important to remember that not everyone can access that prosperity equally. In fact, in many areas of the city, the booming economy is creating a housing crunch with a vacancy rate of just under 1.6%. Housing affordability affects us all, and as the vacancy rate drops, prices rise. Seniors, the working poor, newcomers, and others on fixed incomes all face struggles with their finances. Increasing prices and higher taxes also increase the risk of homelessness. Ottawa is experiencing a high demand for emergency housing, and our local shelters are struggling. As of September 2nd of this year, the city had 330 families in motels and 441 families in the family shelter system. Although the need is great, we're all quite aware the situation could be much worse, and I was pleased to hear that the proposed cuts by the provincial government to the transitional child benefit were postponed and hopefully cancelled. I want to thank Councillor Sudds for her collaboration on lobbying efforts that have resulted in this change in the provincial position, and I'd also like to thank Ministers Lisa MacLeod and Marilee Fullerton for their support. Our council is committed to helping the most vulnerable residents. Nous devons en faire plus pour aider nos résidents dans le besoin, excusez-moi.
We must do more to help people in need and who are vulnerable.
To say that Budget 2020 is the second year in a row that we will invest another $15 million to build new affordable housing in Ottawa. I'm pleased to say that last year's investment, much has been accomplished with 266 new affordable units approved for development so far this year. Grâce à nos investissements de l'an dernier,
Thanks to our investment of last year, we already approved the building of 266 units, affordable units, for this term of council.
with a request for proposal for new affordable housing projects across Ottawa. I'm pleased to announce today that we'll be funding more affordable housing projects with CCOC, proposal for a 31-unit apartment building at 159 Forward Avenue, the Anglican Diocese of Ottawa, in partnership with Christchurch Bells Corners Parish and Cornerstone Housing for Women, for a 35-unit building with a ground floor community services hub containing a food bank and a community resource center, and another 160 units with Ottawa Community Housing for mixed demographic communities suitable for families and seniors. Additionally, just last month, we approved an agreement with Trinity Development whereby they would contribute an additional $7.5 million to the city's affordable housing reserves to build new affordable housing. The 2020 investment into affordable housing reserve will keep this momentum going towards the development of additional affordable housing units in Ottawa. Based on past practice, we can anticipate that this year's city's contribution to housing of $15 million will again leverage at least the equivalent amount of new federal and provincial dollars. These efforts will help lead to a significant increase in the number of affordable units being built in Ottawa in 2020 and beyond. Obviously, the City of Ottawa cannot go it alone in the fight against homelessness. Over the course of the coming months, we will be pushing the Province of Ontario and the Government of Canada and our local housing partners to agree on an even more ambitious set of targets and goals. Nous devons travailler avec les deux autres niveaux du gouvernement et nos partenaires.
We must work with other governments and our partners to make progress in affordable housing.
Working with CMHC to support much-needed renovations and repairs to the YMYWCA at 80 Argyle Street. The Y's renovations will include the costs related to the conversion of 3 additional floors for family transitional housing. And our $15 million investment in 2019 and again in 2020 are the largest direct municipal contributions to housing's capital in the city's history. Ces investissements historiques dans le logement abordable sont les plus importants dans l'histoire de notre ville. We'll also be funding over $31 million going to housing and homelessness agencies in 2020 for case management, housing loss prevention, and operating funding for supportive housing. I look forward to working closely with Council Liaison on Housing and Homelessness, Catherine McKinney, Mathieu Fleury, the Chair of OCH, Jenna Sudds, Chair of CPSC, and Jan Harder, Chair of Planning, and all members of Council on providing more housing for the most vulnerable members of our community. Important progress has also been made in the child care and early years sector in recent years, including new provincial and federal announcements of $50 million that have significantly reduced the wait list, provided fee subsidies for approximately 2,000 more children, provided additional funding to child care service providers for increased access and affordability for families across the city, will create over 400 new spaces in Ottawa. Now, this is in addition to previous investments that we have made and growth in the sector that has seen close to 9,000 new spaces created between 2013 and 2018, or growth of 42%. Council also recently approved the new child care and early years service system plan for 2019 to 2023. With the cost of living in the draft 2020 budget, the community funding program will benefit from a total investment of $24.5 million for community nonprofit social service providers who provide valuable services to residents facing the greatest needs across the city, an increase of almost $500,000. Last month, you may have heard the discussion at CPSC that the city is completing a review of the community funding program in consultation with our community partners. The goal of this review is to ensure agencies are better positioned to respond to the growing and emerging needs of our citizens. Until such time as the review is fully implemented, I am pleased to say that the 2020 budget includes $100,000 for project funding. In 2019, this funding went to 8 agencies across the city to address critical community needs. In 2020, there is also an additional $500,000 in one-time funding to help transition agencies into the new community framework, something I heard from many members of Council. Cette revue de financement communautaire mènera à des recommandations.
This community funding will lead to recommendations later on in 2020, and I'm anxious to see the results.
At the start of this term of Council, we appointed our city's first Women and Gender Equity Liaison with Councillor Kavanagh as its champion. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, for your leadership and your ongoing work in this file. In December 2018, Ottawa City Council endorsed unanimously the creation of a Women and Gender Equity Strategy. This past September, close to 200 participants attended a Women and Gender Equity Public Forum to provide input into that strategy. I found it very encouraging to see this level of interest. In fact, we had to cut off entries because there was not enough space, and I was encouraged to see this level of interest and engagement on women and gender equity. Public consultations have now wrapped up, and a draft strategy will be presented to Council in 2020. The draft 2020 budget includes an investment for a staff position to advance and steward the gender equity strategy. Et en tant que gouvernement municipal, nous essayons constamment d'être plus ouverts et inclusifs à tous nos résidents. This council is committed to ensuring that all of our residents feel welcome and safe. The recent work of Councillor Ralston King illustrates the need to address systemic racism in our community. To further advance the work underway on equity and inclusion, and to align ourselves with our federal and provincial partners on fighting racism, I'd like to announce the creation of an anti-racism secretary for the City of Ottawa, and I want to thank Councillor King for his proposal leading to today's announcement. Congratulations, Councillor. He worked tirelessly on this idea. Yeah. Budgets so rarely get applause, so I didn't know what to do. He worked tirelessly on this idea in consultation with councillors and my office, and this hard work will see this initiative move forward next year. This secretariat will target systemic racism by building an anti-racism approach into our way our city government develops policies, makes decisions, evaluates programs, and monitors outcomes. It will also seek to build on existing community partnerships to ensure that we're all working together. Like our Women and Gender Equity Strategy, it will include funding for a new FTE and operating budget of $100,000. This year, the 75th anniversary of D-Day is the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and next year marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands by Canadian troops. These anniversaries are an opportunity to remember our sacrifices so many have made and so many have made and are making for our country. This week, of course, is also Veterans Week in Canada. Later this week, we will be hosting a ceremony to officially rename the Ottawa Airport Parkway Bridge as the Juno Beach Bridge, thanks to Councillors Brockington and Gower for their work on this important renaming. One of our members of Council is a veteran and a former staff member with the Minister of National Defence. To show our continued appreciation and raise awareness about the challenges faced by our veterans, I'm proud to announce that Councillor Matt Luloff has agreed to take on the role of Council Liaison for Veteran and Military Affairs. Councillor Luloff is also an advocate for better mental health services with a strong understanding of both the supports available and the challenges faced by our veterans. Le conseiller Luloff en fait déjà beaucoup pour représenter les intérêts des anciens.
Councillor Lula has
Thank you for your service and your
done a lot for veterans.
Take on this challenge, which will be funded from within existing budgets. We recently had some very good news about affordable veterans housing as a community-led project by Multi-Faith Housing Initiative was approved by CMHC and will ultimately see 40 new affordable and supportive housing units for veterans built in Water Ridge Village, the former Canadian Forces base in Rockcliffe. Je veux aussi remercier le gouvernement fédéral.
I would like to thank the federal government for its support to our bilingualism policy and its recent contribution to our French services and the investment of $224,000 over 3 years. And the federal government has already accepted our request for $20,000, which will help the Vision Vanier Community Initiative. I also would like to thank Councillor Jean Cloutier for his representation and for the French Association of Ontario Municipalities, and also the number of claims for French services moved from 119 in 2014 to 34 in 2018. That is a reduction of 71%, and after several years, the Maison de la Francophonie will finally be open in the Conseil Carbonet area. And this is thanks to the contribution and collaboration. And so we will be in a position to offer important services to the French-speaking community in the west of Ottawa. We have also important contributions to secure our community.
Is a core service expectation for our residents. The city needs more paramedics to keep pace with our fast-growing and aging population and to keep our response times in line with current standards. That is why last year I laid out a commitment to hire 56 additional paramedics during the this term of council. Budget 2020 provided funding to hire hiring 14 frontline paramedics, the second installment of our 4-year goal. This investment will bolster our efforts to reduce wait times in our fast-growing suburbs and rural communities. However, we know that more needs to be done to reduce the number of level zeros we're experiencing in Ottawa, which is a concern for all of us and our residents alike. I can assure you that senior staff, Chair Suds, and I are working with area hospitals and Dr. Kitts to find solutions. We hope that hospitals hire more nurses, secure more permanent beds, and release paramedics back into the community to do their job. Last Wednesday, I personally spoke with Premier Ford to explain this is an urgent matter and we need the province to help break this constant logjam. He fully understands the dilemma many paramedics across Ontario are facing and pledged to help us to find a permanent solution to this ongoing problem. The draft 2020 budget will also maintain support for the addition of 85 new police officers over the course of this term. Again this year, we will see 30 new officers join the service. Also, Budget 2020 supports Crime Prevention Ottawa to advance ongoing crime prevention initiatives, including at youth risk. CPO will receive over $1 million in funding to support crime prevention initiatives, which is an increase of $35,000 from 2019. I want to thank Councillor Deans for her leadership as Chair of Crime Prevention Ottawa and the Ottawa Police Services Board. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to formally welcome Chief Peter Slowly to Ottawa. I know he's sitting there in the front row. I look forward to working with him and all members of the Police Board. And I told Councillor Deans last week that she and the Police Board did an excellent job in choosing the new chief. Earlier today, the Police Board tabled their draft budget that comes in at 3% on the tax side, plus 1.5% in new growth dollars. Council is also aware that traditionally the city has had to cover OPS's annual deficits, which for the last 3 years was a total one-time contribution of $12.3 million. As you may remember that last year we provided an additional $2.4 million from our tax stabilization fund towards their budget. However, I'm pleased to say this year, OPS did not run a deficit, and for that I'd like to thank Acting Chief Steve Bell for his stewardship and willingness to look for new ways of finding efficiencies and operational savings. Un gros merci au chef Steve.
I would like to thank Steve Bell, interim chief, for the last services over the last few months and the manner in which he managed to carry out efficiencies.
Year with a $2.4 million surplus, which will help offset the 2020 contribution exactly from the city's tax stabilization fund. We all know that building safer and more resilient communities requires a balanced approach to spending. Last year, I brought forward a motion that you kindly supported to expedite the introduction of 20 new red light cameras. I'm happy to say that these red light cameras generate an additional $1.3 million for the police service to help offset their ongoing operational pressures. The revenue to OPS is up from $450,000 in 2019. In 2019, 6 red light cameras were installed, and I'm pleased to say that by the end of 2020, another 14 locations will be equipped with red light cameras. And there has been a reduction of over 50% in right-angle collisions at intersections where red light cameras have been installed. Nous avons fait beaucoup de progrès avec ces caméras.
We made a lot of progress at the traffic lights in order to reduce the number of accidents and also fund the police activities, also better security on the highway.
To the Ottawa Police Service, and any additional cameras will be directed to fund the Strategic Road Safety Action Plan. This plan will implement traffic calming around schools, advance the pedestrian and cycling safety programs, install gateway speed signage in many neighborhoods, and make improvements to warranted pedestrian signals. Last year, we also worked with the Ottawa Police Services Board to find more efficiencies in their budget. To date, and in part through the Provincial Audit and Accountability Fund, OPS has been able to identify $2.2 million in back-office efficiencies, and it's my expectation that this review will result in even further savings in 2020. We need to continue to work with OPS on budget solutions so that they are better placed to protect our ongoing investment in the hiring of frontline officers. Now, the city has been focusing on the revitalization of priority neighborhoods with a Made in Ottawa strategy. Using new and existing program service initiatives, updating infrastructure and promoting redevelopment, the Building Better Revitalized Neighborhoods, or BBRN, program improves the health, vibrancy, and livability of priority neighborhoods. We will invest $180,000 in BBRN in 2020 to complete a variety of initiatives that were identified by the community as priorities. I'd like to thank Councillors Harder, Tierney, Deans, and Fleury for their participation on the BBRN Sponsors Group, and Councillor King has also offered his support for BBRN. Just last week, the city introduced a new approach to support residents in areas of emerging need through the Integrated Neighborhood Services teams. These teams will address the health and well-being of our neighborhoods facing the most complex needs through a coordinated service delivery approach. Initial areas of focus for the Integrated Neighborhood Services teams will include Vanier, Overbrook, Caldwell, Carlington, Haringey, and South End. Now, with the help of $2.7 million in funding from the provincial government, Ottawa Public Health will be introducing new dental care services for low-income seniors at our 4 city-supported dental clinics and with dental partners across the city. Undoubtedly, 2020 will be a year of transition at Ottawa Public Health, with the recent announcements regarding governance of public health in Ontario and a change in the provincial funding formula. I'd like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank Chair Keith Eglai and Ottawa Medical Officer of Health Dr. Vera Etches and her team for their proactive engagement on these consultations with the provincial government. I believe that their leadership will help steward public health through these changes so they can continue to work towards positive health outcomes for Ottawa residents. I know that Councillor Eglai is on the AMO working group as well, which allows us to have a voice at that province-wide table. The city has a proactive environmental strategy that targets an 80% reduction in GHG emissions by 2050. It is working toward that change through its air quality and climate change management plan, official plan policies, its energy transition strategy, energy evolution, and a variety of specific energy, conservation, and environmental initiatives. The city is also taking a proactive approach to protecting and preserving its natural assets for future generations through initiatives such as the Ottawa River Action Plan and the Urban Forest Management Plan. We
should invest in our environment, and this is what we'll be doing in the 2020 budget.
Tree planting programs to increase forest cover, enhance city streets, parks and facilities, and mitigate climate change. Our goal to plant 500,000 trees in this term of council is realistic because we did it in the last term of council. Many of these initiatives underway, for example, converting our streetlights to LED, greening our vehicle fleet and our buildings, are also reaping economic benefits in terms of cost savings for city operations. We're also working on increasing the city's capacity for climate resilience through important initiatives such as adopting floodplain mapping and community flood risk profiles to better position vulnerable areas for future environmental stresses. Budget 2020 includes $3 million for the energy management and investment strategy to reduce the city's environmental footprint, ensure compliance under the Green Energy Act, and advance our many conservation and demand management goals. Budget 2020 also includes $200,000 for the wild parsnip management program. This funding supports approximately 1,500 kilometers of roadside spraying and spot spraying at over 100 parkland locations. I'd like to thank Chair Moffat and Chair El Shantiri for their commitment to this program and for their overall leadership on supporting an environmentally sustainable Ottawa. 2019 has been a year of change on city roads and across our transit system with the introduction of light rail. It's not a surprise that again this year, the dominant issue that we heard from residents is that our residents want us to invest more in our city's roads, our infrastructure, and our transit system. La condition de nos routes, de notre infrastructure et de transport
And
commun
our public transit system is a concern for all communities.
Investment will be especially challenging this year due to the decision of the provincial government not to double the gas tax for municipalities. As you may recall, last year Council approved adding $9.8 million to the contribution to capital over a 5-year period to eliminate this infrastructure gap. A second challenge is that the doubling of the gas tax plan was built into the transit long-term financial plan. Over the 30-year period, the $980 million in funds was to be provided through the gas tax increase to pay for transit capital works. Both problems needed to be solved through the 2020 budget in order to meet the goals set by Council. Thankfully, in 2019, the federal government announced a one-time doubling of the federal gas tax, totaling $58 million for the City of Ottawa, and I want to thank local government members of Parliament and the Prime Minister for this much-needed investment. I'd also like to thank our FCM representative, Councillor Tierney, for advocating so effectively for this announcement at the FCM level. The 2019 federal funding allowed us to develop the plan that is before you today, one that will address these two issues for Council's consideration in the 2020 budget. For this year, or for next year rather, we're proposing that the transit levy increase and that we add a $9.8 million increase to transit's capital contribution, which is within the overall tax cap of 3%. It's important to remember that this increase in the transit levy represents roughly $42 for the average homeowner and is included within the overall tax cap.
These provisions are all within our maximum increase of 3% of our budget.
$58 million in one-time gas tax funds will be used as a substitute for the $9.8 million that would have been added to the contribution to capital to eliminate the infrastructure gap. This innovative approach, and I give credit to our Treasurer and Deputy Treasurers, solves two challenges resulting from the cancellation of the gas tax increase. It also ensures that we meet Council's desire to see more investments in roads and infrastructure renewal works. Our total investments to maintain and renew tax-supported assets such as roads, sidewalks, and facilities will increase by $22.5 million this year, bringing us to $151 million invested in 2020. That's an increase of 18% over 2019. Because of these investments, the existing infrastructure gap will be fully addressed within 7 years instead of the projected 10 years, while adding no new debt. This
rate of investment will enable us to eliminate the infrastructure deficit within 7 years instead of 10.
The infrastructure deficit facing our city. We have heard we've heard at the budget consultations that we need to do a much better job of improving our roads, sidewalks, pathways, and facilities. In 2020, the road resurfacing budget, including rural road upgrades and preservation treatments, will be $51 million, up from the yearly average of $35.5 million over the last term of Council. This investment in road resurfacing includes, as examples, $2.2 million for Hetherington Road from Albion to Walkley in Councillor Dean's ward, including sidewalk renewal. $2.3 million for St. Laurent Boulevard from Montreal Road to Donald Street in Councillor King's ward, including sidewalk renewal. $12.7 million for bridges, Booth, Mackenzie, King, and Pooley in Councillor McKenney's ward. $6.5 million for integrated work on Scott Street west of Smurl Avenue in Councillor Leaper's ward. $4 million for Riverside Drive. I know Councillor Brockington will be happy to hear this, from Hunt Club to Walkley in Councillor Brockington's ward. $2.5 million for March Road from Carling Avenue to Shirley's Brook in Councillor Sudd's ward. We've had long discussions on that stretch of road. Over $2 million for Bronson Avenue from Brookfield to south of Brewer Way, and for the southbound lanes and intersection at Sunnyside in Councillor Menard's ward. $1.6 million for Riverside Drive from Hinks Lane to Tremblay, and $1.4 million for Chapman Boulevard in Councillor Cloutier's ward, including sidewalk renewal. $2 million for Maryvale Road, and $4 million to resurface the Nepean Sportsplex parking lot, which is like the surface of the moon, in Councillor Eglai's ward. $3.5 million to resurface Huntley Road from Perth Street to Fluellen Road in Councillor Moffat's ward. Nous allons voir des investissements en infrastructure dans tous les coins.
We will be improving surfacing in all areas of the bill.
Of timelines with planned and needed sewer and culvert projects. As you can imagine, staff must juggle the coordination of infrastructure investments, the need to consider local traffic and mobility, and the restriction of funding constraints. In addition, Council has approved our priorities through the Comprehensive Asset Management Program and the Transportation Master Plan, which guide their infrastructure needs forecast. Our rural infrastructure investments will reach $44.5 million in 2020, up from the four-year average of $39.7 million. For example, some of our rural investments include $1.8 million to design and construct 11 culverts in Councillor Moffat's ward, $2 million for Piperville Road and Bear Brook Bridge in Councillor Blaise ward, $3.6 million to design and build 25 culverts, and $3.1 million for gravel road upgrades, including Spruce Ridge Road in Councillor El Shantiri's ward. $1.2 million, I know Councillor DeRose will be happy to hear, Dalmanet Road is on the list, $2.4 million for Snake Island Road, and $1.3 million for River Road in Councillor DeRose's ward. Budget 2020 also invests $66.2 million for road growth projects, including Strandherd Drive from Mara Vista to Jockville in Councillor Harder's ward, and $4.2 million for Canada South Link between Hope Side to Highway 416, something I know Councillor Hubley has worked on for many, many years. Budget 2020 will also allow the city to resurface, renew, or rehabilitate approximately 100 kilometers of roads across the city. We know
that Ottawa has one of the main network transportation in Canada.
Clear 6,000 kilometers of roads and 2,300 kilometers of sidewalks through the city. Maintaining our network is expensive, and last year's harsh winter left our winter maintenance budget in a deficit. The 2020 estimate base budget for winter operations is increasing by $5.6 million for a total of $78.3 million, which is a 7.7% increase over 2019. Of the $5.6 million increase, approximately $2.9 million will be allocated to sidewalk maintenance. I'm pleased to say that the winter operations budget now reflects the latest three-year average actuals from 2016 to 2018. The 2020 budget also includes $250,000 in funding to undertake a review of winter operations maintenance quality standards, which will focus on sidewalks and Class 5 residential streets. Now, following last year's very challenging winter, staff have been reviewing their service delivery model to ensure better sidewalk maintenance this coming winter. They will be increasing coverage on the network with the goal of having 24/7 coverage available on all sidewalk beats. We're getting away from a one-size-fits-all approach, and salt, sand, and grit will be available across all areas. Staff have also created area-specific heat maps focusing on problems across the city, like catch basins that have been problematic in the past. Finally, we're deploying more and better sidewalk equipment, like the very effective icebreakers we started piloting this past winter. We believe that all of these measures will lead to better clearing and safer sidewalks for residents this coming winter.
Through all those provisions, we believe that our residents will have better conditions on their sidewalks during next winter.
Thaw cycles in 2019 has also left our cities with far too many potholes. For example, between January 1st and October 15th, city staff filled 262,000 potholes across the city, which is 18% higher higher than the 3-year average. The 2020 budget for pothole repair includes a $600,000 increase to the asphalt repair program, bringing the annual program to $9.8 million, which is a 7% increase over 2019. Now, Budget 2020 also includes $1.65 million to fund the Traffic and Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Program, with each councillor receiving $50,000 for road safety initiatives in their community, an increase of 25% over 2018. There is also $500,000 set aside for pedestrian crossovers in order to improve the safety of pedestrians at key crossings across the city. As a result of the 2016-2018 pedestrian crossover pilot project, there is a list of approximately 100 locations citywide that have been confirmed to meet the pedestrian traffic volume warrants for PXO implementation. Further review of these locations is underway to select the type of PXO required, and once reviews are concluded, staff will be working with respective ward councillors to prioritize the installation of the warranted PXOs within their ward. The 2020 list of PXOs installations will be available in the coming weeks once all meetings have concluded with members of council. I know that Councillors Gower and DeRuse want to see PXOs in their respective wards at Stittsville Main Street and St. Mark's High School and Greeley Elementary School. There's also $4.2 million for intersection control measures and just over $3 million for network modifications for Albion Road and Leitrim. Budget 2020 includes $2.4 million for new traffic control devices program, $1 million for the Safety Improvement Program, which monitors traffic collisions annually and undertakes necessary roadway modifications. And in 2020, this program will see improvements at Laurier Avenue West between Elgin and Queen Elizabeth Ramp and road safety improvements at McCarthy Road Curve. $600,000 towards accessible pedestrian signals and $420,000 for Safer Roads Ottawa. And again this year, Budget 2020 also includes funding for active transportation with an investment in both the Ottawa Pedestrian and Cycling Plan of $9.1 million. Ce financement nous permettra de prévenir, d'éliminer les décès.
These funds will enable us to eliminate deaths due to road accidents.
Transportation environment that focuses on pedestrian and cycling safety with funding geared towards highest ranked locations, as I think we can all agree that any cycling or pedestrian death is one too many. Ottawa, for your information, has 980 kilometers of cycling facilities, over 356 kilometers of city-owned multi-use pathways, or MUPs, 117 kilometers of cycling facilities that were added during the 2014-2018 term of council, and more than $80 million of investments over 2014-2018 term of council to expand cycling and pedestrian infrastructure in all parts of the city. The multi-use pathway includes 30 major grade-separated structures that provide connections for pedestrians and cyclists across major roadways, rail corridors, and rivers. Examples of active transportation projects to be included in 2020, $4.71 million for the Ottawa Cycling Facilities Program to plan, design, and construct cycling facilities identified in the plan, $2.75 million for the Pedestrian Facilities Program, $1.95 million for the cycling and pedestrian bridge over the Rideau River at Carleton University in Councillor Menard's ward, $22,000 for pedestrian intersection improvements, $1.35 million to improve active transportation links to Stage 2 LRT, and $34,000 to introduce new transportation demand measures such as cycling, education, cycling safety, school travel planning, bike-to-work campaign, carpooling promotion, and the development of regional cycling maps. And $6.24 million will be used to repurpose the bus lanes when widen sidewalks and improving cycling facilities on Albert and Slater streets between Empress and Waller. Budget 2020 also includes $4.2 million for intersection control measures in growth areas, and there's also $3 million for modifications to existing intersections. Staff will be working to make intersections safer with $2.4 million towards the new traffic control devices program in established areas. For example, through the program, we'll be installing a pedestrian signal on Laurier near Percy. Roundabouts are also considered an alternative means of providing traffic control, and in 2020, funding is going towards the construction of roundabouts in many locations, including Huntmar Drive at Richardson Side Road in Councillor El Shantiri's ward, and Barnsdale Road at Prince of Wales Drive in Councillor Moffat's ward. In addition, Budget 2020 includes $4 million towards initiatives identified in the 2020-2024 Strategic Road Safety Action Plan. The strategic plan identifies areas for road safety, along with countermeasures that can be implemented to address associated collision types. These initiatives align with Vision Zero or safe system principles on road safety, and the emphasis will be on areas with vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists at intersections and on rural roads. I want to thank Chair Blais for his hard work on this long list of road safety initiatives. Staff are currently undertaking a study to better understand the condition of roads impacted by spring flooding and the recent tornado. This is particularly important for Councillors El Shantiri, Kavanaugh, Blais, and Eglai, whose wards were hardest hit by the tornado and/or the flooding. This study is expected to in the coming weeks and will inform the rehabilitation of roads in wards 5, 9, 10, 7, and 19. The city will also be seeking provincial disaster mitigation funding to increase our investment in these impacted areas. In 2020, the city will be investing $4 million to improve the city's capacity to manage stormwater and reduce the risk of flooding through the Wet Weather Infrastructure Master Plan. Further flood mitigation efforts include $15 million to repair and replace culverts, including $9 million in the rural areas. Council recently approved an additional $500,000 investment that will take, the work will begin in 2020 in the Britannia Village berm in Councillor Kavanaugh's ward. This berm was very effective in protecting Britannia during the 2017 and 2019 floods, but the flood of 2019 was prolonged and there is evidence of leakage due to floodwater. The money will be used to make much needed repairs. And we also heard from residents across the city about the need to improve transit, connectivity to our LRT system, and to improve bus dependability across the city. I'd like to remind residents about the largest single investment in transit in 2020, our Stage 2 system, a $4.7 billion investment. Stage 2 of Ottawa's light rail transit system will be extending service east by 12 kilometers and 5 stations from Blair Station to Trim, west by 15 kilometers and 11 stations from Tunney's Pasture to Algonquin and Moody, and south on the Trillium line by 12 kilometers and 8 stations from Greenboro Station to Limebank Station in Councillor Meehan's ward, and this includes a link to the Ottawa International Airport. In 2020, the city is forecasted to spend $817 million on Stage 2. Along with this investment in LRT, the city will be spending $725,000 to review and update the Transportation Master Plan.
Shall begin this year the important review of the master plan of the whole city.
Acknowledge that there have been times over the last few weeks where both our bus and LRT system has been challenged, and as a city, we need to do better. We will have a more fulsome discussion on LRT at Transit Commission this afternoon, as Chair Hubley and John Manconi will update the Commission and the public on their progress in finding solutions to these frustrating issues. In anticipation of these challenges, in 2019, we included $5.1 million annually to deliver bus service improvements to many communities across the city as a result of one-on-one meetings Mr. Manconi's staff had with each member of Council. This funding saw incremental investment in routes in almost every ward, but this investment has proven not to be enough. That is why, again in 2020, we'll be investing an additional $7.5 million to expand the bus network to improve service reliability, increase capacity, reduce waiting times, and provide new connections to growth areas. This funding will increase the number of standby buses at key locations and will allow for additional time on routes to accommodate for traffic. It will also increase capacity on high ridership routes, provide improved connections in new growth areas, allow for additional early and late trips, and improve service to employment hubs and park and rides. We have heard loud and clear that riders on routes such as 20, 39, 257, and 75, just to name a few, among others that will be discussed later today at the Transit Commission, they want better dependability in their bus service that connects to the LRT. For example, my staff has been working with the Good Companion Centre in Councillor McKenney's ward to increase service and access to the centre, which plays such an important role in fighting social isolation of hundreds of seniors in our community. A solution has been found and will be announced in the near future. Staff are currently reviewing service needs in the following areas: capacity on Orleans routes connecting to and from Blair Station to better serve Councillor Tierney, Blais, Dudas, and Lulof's wards; Barhaven routes connecting to and from Tunney's Pasture for residents of Councillors Harder, Meehan, and Eglai's ward; service to National Defence Headquarters at the old Nortel building in Councillor Kavanaugh's ward, possible earlier and later trips on local routes as customers adjust travel times, weekend service to the Museum of Canadian History, overnight service and connections to the Rideau Station, and all connections to fast-growing areas in Barrhaven South, Ottawa South, Stittsville, Canada, Orleans, and Richmond. Merci à tous les conseillers qui ont fait pression.
Thank you to all councillors who insisted to get this new investment.
It includes $43 million to replace 63 buses that have reached the end of their 15-year life cycle, and $6 million for the introduction of electric buses as part of a pilot project that will start next year with the support of the federal government, and our thanks to Minister Catherine McKenna. With the launch of LRT in our city, we also put in place measures to ensure these historic transit investments and benefit all residents, including those who need it most, either to go to work or to go to medical appointments or to visit friends. That is why we introduced the EquiPass and EquiFare in 2017 to offer our low-income residents access to transit services at a deep 50% discount. In the month of October 2019, for instance, more than 4,000 EquiPass monthly passes were sold, and 12,800 residents had registered as eligible EquiPass users. The EquiPass, as you know, costs $58.25 monthly for residents below the poverty line and saves eligible users approximately $700 annually. I'm happy to announce that the cost of the 2020 EquiPass and Community Pass will both be frozen at 2019 rates. This one-year freeze for our most vulnerable riders will be achieved with a one-time contribution of $95,000 for the EquiPass and $75,000 for the Community Pass to bring the total subsidy to $9.6 million in 2020.
I'm proud that we can assist our needy residents.
We also heard from the community that more needs to be done to improve service at Paratranspo. Budget 2020 includes an increase of $2 million in annual base funding for Paratranspo to provide more capacity to meet increasing ridership levels, and this brings the total Paratranspo operating budget to just over $33 million annually. In 2020, Paratranspo will also introduce a full suite of online services to improve the booking experience and reduce wait times for customers. Budget 2020 also recommends investing $14.5 million in transit growth projects, including $9.3 million for transit priority measures along Baseline west of Woodruff to Bayshore Station, $1.7 million to acquire property for new park and ride facilities, including Fernbank in Canada, $1.7 million to purchase railway corridors for transit corridor protection, and over $1 million for rapid transit planning through environmental assessments. My sincere thanks to Chair Hubley and Vice Chair Cloutier for their strong advocacy to ensure that we drastically improve the reliability of the service. The city is also investing in several parks and community facilities, including but not limited to $4 million for Blackburn Arena expansion and $350,000 for a new splash pad at Blackburn Park in Innis, a project I know Councillor Dudas has been waiting patiently for many years. $1.4 million for Corkery Community Building expansion in West Carleton, an important priority for Councillor El Shantiri. Over $1 million for park improvements, including a playground and pathway in Fairmily View Park, a park replacement at Richmond Lions Park and Healy's Heath Park, and new parks in Maynell and Washka Park and Rideau Goulburn, long overdue investments in Councillor Moffat's ward. $300,000 for Stinson Park and the study for Field Hockey Park at Barrhaven, $205,000 for Kenmore Bicentennial Park playground structures in Councillor DeRuse's ward, $300,000 for Village Square Park in Stittsville, an important project in Councillor Gower's ward and the site of many community gatherings, and $700,000 for park improvements in Canada. New in 2020, through strategic initiatives, is a $2.4 million ward-specific recreation investment fund. The fund will provide each member of council with $100,000 to allocate towards local capital priorities. Projects could include park improvements like courts, gazebos, rink bunkers and boards, basketball court. This fund could also go towards building improvements like climbing walls and floor upgrades in gyms and fitness areas in your wards. Ce fonds permettra à chaque membre du Conseil de répondre rapidement aux besoins de la communauté.
Each councillor will be able to meet the pressing needs of their community for minor improvements in their park.
2020, funding from upper levels of government will be announced for projects approved through the new Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation Fund. As you're all aware, the infrastructure program is to be funded jointly by the federal and provincial and municipal governments, and the municipal share of each project will be 26.67%. Ottawa is anticipating an allocation of approximately $65 million through this program. And it's my understanding that we have submitted several exciting projects for consideration, including but not limited to the East Urban Community Centre, Le Centre Récréatif François Dupuis, Barhaven Community and Cultural Centre in Councillor Meehan's ward, 5 parking lots at recreation facilities like Fitzroy Community Centre, Mooney's Bay Pavilion, and the list does go on because members submitted a region-wide idea as well as ward-specific ideas, and that will be up to the federal and provincial government to work with us to see where our $56 million contribution will go. There are several areas of Ottawa where the community and the not-for-profit sector has also demonstrated a renewed interest in the development and maintenance of winter trails in order to facilitate a variety of non-motorized winter sports. I'm pleased to say that the City and the NCC have been working together in a coordinated fashion to support winter trails, and that staff have come to an agreement on a cost-sharing basis to support a number of trail initiatives. Staff is working with the Winter Trail Alliance to finalize these agreements to support Ski Heritage East in Councillor Luloff's ward, and the SJAM, or the John A. Macdonald pathway, in partnership with Dovercourt in Councillor Leeper and Kavanaugh's ward. Now, as you know, Ottawa 2020 Arts and Heritage Plan, adopted by City Council in 2003, articulated a 20-year vision and strategic direction in the advancement of culture in Ottawa. City of Ottawa departments have planned and delivered on the 57 actions recommended in the plan and other key cultural projects since 2013. Cities worldwide are embracing culture as a critical to the city's identity, livability, social cohesion, and economic prosperity. Les arts et la culture sont essentiels à notre
Arts and culture are essential to our identity and prosperity.
The city processed 471 submissions, resulting in a total of 321 unique allocations to 175 local not-for-profit cultural organizations and 103 individuals to deliver arts, heritage, festival, and cultural programs. Budget 2020 includes an additional $255,000 for a total budget of just over $10.7 million for the cultural community. The next 2 years will focus on completion of actions underway and the review of outstanding actions. And in 2020, we'll begin planning and consulting to produce Ottawa's next 10-year cultural blueprint under the direction of Chair Suds. Ottawa also has made several important capital investments in the arts and cultural community, including $19.4 million for the Ottawa Art Gallery, which is a great success, and Arts Court redevelopment, and more than $2 million for La Nouvelle Seine, both of these projects in Councillor Fleury's community. Later this month, we're hosting the final series of public engagement sessions for the future Central Library, a partnership with Library and Archives Canada. This concludes the most ambitious public consultation the city has ever undertaken for a public facility. Councillor Tierney has been working tirelessly as chair of the board on this project, and he's assured me without hesitation that the entire city will be very impressed. We'll unveil the design with our federal partners in the first quarter of 2020, and I know, because I saw a little bit of a sneak preview, that our residents will be very excited with the proposed design of this important civic facility, but I also know that it's still a work in progress, and we look forward to the big reveal in 2020. And to date, close to 6,000 citizens have contributed in person and online, and they've inspired the location and desire of this iconic facility in the heart of our nation's capital. And I want to thank Minister McKenna for her steadfast support of this project, a unique partnership, the first of its kind in Canada, between a local municipal government and Library and Archives Canada. And Councillor Tierney, thank you, and Danielle MacDonald and your entire team. The 6,000 people show that people love their public library. Budget 2020 also includes funding to celebrate Canada's 50th anniversary with the residents in Councillor Hubley and Suds wards. $50,000 in funding will be available to celebrate this special golden anniversary, just as Vanier celebrated their anniversary and Richmond their 200th anniversary, all within the last 2 years. And yesterday at FEDCO, we approved $300,000 in funding, pending budget approval, for the Heritage Grant Program for building restoration and $500,000 for the tax increment equivalent grant. I want to really thank Councillor Gower for his leadership, both as chair of the Build Heritage Committee, as well as an active member of the Mayor's Task Force on Heritage. Know that these tools will assist in the preservation of properties designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. Now, since I was elected mayor, I've made a commitment to the residents of Ottawa to keep taxes reasonable, deliver the services residents expect, and keep the city affordable while building our core infrastructure. These have been my top priorities of the last 2 mandates, et je suis fier d'avoir respecté mes engagements.
I'm proud that I was up to par in the past 8 years.
And a minority government at the federal level. It is clear again this year we need to be prepared for a change in approach, variations in policy, and some uncertainty in funding, many of which could impact areas of municipal life. I believe in being upfront with residents, and that is why I've been consistent and transparent about our tax goal of no more than 3% for 2020. I've heard from residents, and I believe they are prepared to contribute to improve our transit service, infrastructure, mobility, and they have made it clear that they want the city to provide services that put residents first. We also heard that they want Budget 2020 to balance fiscal and social responsibility, and I think Budget 2020 strikes that balance. The budget proposes innovative solutions to address our infrastructure funding issues, made more challenging by changes in funding from upper levels of government. By taking a balanced approach, Budget 2020 helps ensure Ottawa remains a safe and vibrant community for decades to come. It also keeps an eye on the conditions that create economic opportunities and includes programs to help communities thrive. The budget also keeps our debt ratio well below the provincial average and maintains our AAA credit rating. Our city must remain affordable so that people can have a place to call home in a safe and supportive community. With Council's support, I will continue to work tirelessly to ensure that Ottawa gets its fair share of available funding from upper levels of government moving forward on such city building priorities such as extending LRT to Stittsville, Canada, and Barrhaven in Stage 3 that would benefit the wards of Councillor Harder, Gower, Hubley, Suds, Meehan directly. I want to thank all residents and members of council who contributed to the ideas for the 2020 budget process. Merci à tous nos résidents qui ont contribué.
Thank you to all the residents who took part in the budget process 2020.
Vice chairs, committee members for their input to date and for the work ahead to facilitate the respective budgets through their committees. Merci à tous les conseillers et conseillères.
Thank you to all councillors for their ideas and important contribution to this budget process.
Thank my own team in the mayor's office, and particularly Robin Guest, Serge Arpin, Livia Belsili, and Mathieu Gravel, and also the city manager, Mr. Kanalakis, and the city treasurer, and the 2 deputy treasurers, and their staff. I'd like to end by expressing my gratitude for the hard work, integrity, and professionalism of our municipal public service, work often done under very challenging conditions. This budget will be the last for our exceptionally competent and dedicated General Manager of Financial Services and City Treasurer, Marian Similuk. I want to thank Marian for her patience, persistence, and dedication to the 2020 budget and the many budgets that preceded it. Ms. Similuk has a unique gift, as we all know, of exceptional financial facts, innovative imagination, and a keen dedication to finding elegant solutions to complex financial problems that save money and protect taxpayers. Marian is also has an unprecedented ability to communicate complex budget information to the average taxpayer and to explain the financial complexities to members of council and the media. Marian, on behalf of the City Council and the over 1 million residents of Ottawa, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your years of service, your work ethic, your candor, and your steadfast commitment to this city and its long-term financial health. It will be a gross understatement to say that you will be greatly missed. Thank you very, very much for your service. For now, I am thrilled to know that you will be with us for these final deliberations of Budget 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, mes collègues, in conclusion, I believe that Budget 2020 strikes the right balance between keeping our city affordable, improving the conditions of our road and transit network, delivering a sustainable infrastructure plan, and maintaining core services and programs. This balanced approach positions Ottawa for continued growth, prosperity, and livability. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. And now we will hear from our city manager. But first, I believe we have a motion from Councillor Derouz, I believe, or Luloff. Councillor Dudas.
Be it resolved that the Mayor's remarks given at the City Council meeting on November 6, 2019 be appended to the minutes of today's Council meeting.
On the motion, carried. Thank you. Merci. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Councillor Gower, please.
That the following reports related to the 2020 draft budget estimates be received and tabled. 1, the report from the Deputy City Treasurer, Corporate Finance, entitled Draft 2020 Operating and Capital Budgets. 2, the report from the Committee of Adjustment, entitled 2020 Draft Operating Estimates, Committee of Adjustment. 3, the report from Crime Prevention Ottawa, entitled Crime Prevention Ottawa 2020 Draft Budget. 4, the report from the Ottawa Police Services Board, entitled Ottawa Police Services Board 2020 Draft Operating and Capital Budgets. 5, the report from the Ottawa Public Library Board, entitled Ottawa Public Library 2020 Draft Budget Estimates. 6, the report from the Ottawa Board of Health, entitled 2020 Draft Operating Budget for the Ottawa Board of Health, and that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider the following reports from the Innovative Client Services Department as they provide information supplemental to the 2020 budget reports being tabled at this meeting. 1, the report from the Director of Human Resources, entitled FTE Analysis Report, Information Supplemental to the Budget Estimates. And 2, the report from the Director of Fleet Services, entitled 2020 Municipal Vehicle and Equipment Plan, Information Supplemental to the Budget Estimates. And that the report from the City Manager, entitled Proposed 2019 to 2022 Term of Council Priorities, including the updated Document 1 with financial information, be received and tabled, and that the following reports be received and considered. Item 8 of Community and Protective Services Committee Report 7, Audit Committee Report 5, Built Heritage Subcommittee Report 6, Planning Committee Report 14, and the report from the City Clerk, entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of October 23rd, 2019.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Luloff. On the motion, carried. Tabling of the 2020 budget estimates. Report to be tabled at the meeting. Présentation de prévision budgétaire de 2020. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your leadership, guidance, and support in building the 2020 budget. Merci, Monsieur le Maire, pour votre appui lors du processus budgétaire 2020. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the entire senior leadership team and their staff who worked diligently over the course of the summer and the fall, together with Marion Semilek and her team, to develop a budget that aligns with the priorities of Council. As Council knows, we start the process every year with many expectations and cost pressures, and we spend a lot of time finding solutions and mitigating the pressures that come with an organization of 17,000 employees and more than 100 service lines to bring it in line with Council's tax target. I'm grateful for staff's innovation, creativity, and business sense for resolving these issues by working collaboratively with each other and our elected officials. I believe truly that we struck the right balance between spending on existing core services and investing for our future. I'm proud of this budget, as is our entire team, a budget that we believe addresses all the feedback and issues Council identified as part of the budget consultation process and one-on-one meetings. Finally, I'm grateful to the Mayor's Office for the collaborative way we work together to meet the needs of our services and meet the expectations of Council. I want to close by acknowledging that this is Marion Semilek's last budget. I'll have many more things to say about Marion as we approach her final date at the end of December, but I wanted to point out that, as the mayor said, that she's been a strong financial steward for our organization for nearly 30 years, and during this time, there's been no problem too big to solve, and she has helped us get through many challenging situations. For me personally, she's been a valued member of the senior leadership team. She's been a strong voice and a true servant leader to her staff, who's led an incredible team of people who have helped set the groundwork for our financial future, and I think we are in good shape financially due to her and her team's efforts. We've all benefited from her experience, talent, and knowledge, and we're grateful for her years of public service and dedication to our city. So thank you, merci. I'd now like to turn it over to Isabel Jasmine, our Deputy Treasurer, to prepare the draft budget estimates to Council, the overview. Thank you.
And for colleagues, if you could hold your questions of a high-level nature until after the boards have gone through, because we have the Chief of Police, we have the Library, and the Health Board that also have to present after Isabel.
Thank you. So today's presentation is an overview of all the city budgets, including police, public health, library, and transit. La présentation aujourd'hui donne un aperçu de tous les budgets de la ville, y compris ceux de la police, de la santé publique, des bibliothèques et des transports en commun. Only a summary is provided in this presentation, as the detailed budgets will be presented to each committee, board, or commission. Today's budget reflects the direction approved in September. Various factors must be taken into consideration when developing the budget. One of the main factors is the impact of collective agreements and changes in labor regulations. For example, the required increases in the contribution to the Canada Pension Plan. Inflation must also be included to ensure the budget is keeping pace with the cost of providing services. Base adjustments are also made to reflect any 2019 budget experience that will continue into the future. For example, increasing pressure on the winter operations based on past experience. We must also build into the budget the cost of maintaining the city's growing infrastructure and delivering services to a growing population. Lastly, we also had to consider any changes in provincial funding, such as the elimination of the doubling of the gas tax or new provincial programs. The budget directions were approved in September, with the main direction to limit the increase to the municipal portion of the property tax bill to no more than 3%. Each component of the municipal tax bill, which includes police and transit, are increasing at different rates, but the overall tax increase remains at 3%. Chaque composante de la taxe municipale qui comprend la police,
Each element of the city tax that includes police services and transit will increase at various rates, but the global increase stays at 3%.
The annual additional taxation revenues from new assessment generates an additional 1.5%. User fees and charges are to increase with the cost of delivering the service, as stated in the fiscal framework and the long-range financial plan. This budget also reflects a 2.5% increase in transit fares on January 1, 2020. Although the fares were increased in October 2019, the fare increase prior to that was in January 2018, meaning residents enjoyed a 21-month fare freeze. Also of note, this budget includes a full freeze on Equifare, Equipass, and Community Pass for all of 2020. This equates to $440,000 budget pressure, which is included in the community and social services budget. The rate budget has been developed in accordance with the long-range financial plan for rate programs. With this budget, the average urban residential home valued at $404,000 will see an increase of $109 per year, which is 3%. A rural home will see an increase of $77 per year, or 2.5%, and a commercial property, $229 per year. Une maison résidentielle urbaine moyenne évaluée à 404 000 $ verra une augmentation de $109 par an, qui est 3%. Une maison rurale à $77 par an, ou 2,5%. Une propriété commerciale à $229 par an. The dollar value is estimated number based on the budget. The actual amount will be based on the actual valuation of the properties and changes to the tax policy adopted by Council before finalizing the tax rates. Similar to the tax bill, the various components of the water bill are increasing at different rates. But for the average urban property consuming 180 cubic meters of water a year, the overall average increase is 4.7%, or $36 annually, or $3 per month. For the average rural non-connected single-family home, the increase is $6 for the year, or 50 cents per month. The rate increases are aligned with the operating and capital requirements in each service area. The total budget for 2020 is $3.76 billion. It is made up of 12 different service areas. Over 58% of the operating budget is made up of 4 key services: water and sewer, police services, transit, and community and social services. As you will see on the next slide, much of the revenue for these services comes from sources other than tax. Water and sewer is paid for by revenue from the water bill. Half of transit operating costs are paid for by fare revenue, and over 80% of community and social services are paid for by provincial and federal funding. Les 4 principaux services représentent plus que 58% du budget total.
These services represent the community services, transit, $615 million, and water and wastewater, and police services.
Capital contributions make up the 5th largest percentage of the budget at $347 million. This next graph shows the sources of funding for the $3.76 billion budget. User fees and property taxes are the main sources of revenue to support the operations of the city. Property taxes and payment in lieu of taxes add up to $1.9 billion and make up more than 51% of the city's revenues. User fees and service charges are budgeted at $933 million, including revenue from the water bill, transit fares, recreational fees, and various other fees to recover the cost of delivering user-specific services. The $711 million shown for the federal and provincial funding represents the conditional grants for services such as social services, child care services, long-term care, paramedics, and others. As conditional grants, these funds are not available to be used for any other purpose. This slide shows the staffing changes requested in the 2020 budget. These FTE requests are to address areas of growth and are primarily funded by increases in fees or funding from the province. The major increases in city services are for the additional 14 paramedics, growth in planning and infrastructure services primarily funded by fees, and increases to public works for winter and roads maintenance and to maintain new or expanded infrastructure. The increase for Ottawa Police Services includes 30 additional police officers and 5 FTEs for operational requirements, which is offset by a reduction of 8 FTEs from administrative efficiencies. The increases in transit FTEs are required for service expansion and to improve service reliability. While the 2020 FTE request is larger than previous years, it should be remembered that FTEs have only increased by 38 over the previous 4 years, not including police. The funding capacity that has been created as a result of the proposed tax increases, user fee increases, and revenue that we are receiving from other levels of government totals 120.3. La capacité de financement créée par les augmentations des taxes proposées, les frais d'utilisation et les revenus que nous recevons des autres ordres de gouvernement totalisent 120,3 millions de dollars. New assessment adds an additional $24.9 million in taxes. 3% overall tax revenue increase generates another 49.7. User fees and revenues are increasing by $38.5 million. This not only includes regular inflationary and cost recovery increases in fees like solid waste, transit, and recreational services, but also increases in general revenues to the city, such as investment revenue, penalties, and interest. The increase of matching funding from provincial cost sharing is $7.2 million, primarily to cover paramedics, public health, and police services. In developing the draft budget, one of the first steps is to review the previous year where there were cost or revenue increases or decreases that were not anticipated but are of a permanent nature. This table shows the key factors from 2019 that will have an impact in 2020. $4.1 million is included for the Microsoft Office 365 software licenses. The investment in this enterprise tool will help to increase overall productivity. Insurance premiums increased in 2019, and as a result, $3.25 million is added to the base in 2020. An additional $3.1 million will be added to the winter maintenance budget, bringing the total to $78.3 million, which reflects the 3-year average spending. $1.5 million will be added to long-term care services to cover the continued budget pressure to fully cover the staffing costs for their 24/7 operations. The base budget for fleet life cycle will be increased by $1 million to control maintenance costs and replace fleet on a timely basis. The increase of $7 million in the transit base budget is primarily for O-Train Line 1 and service expansion costs that were partially funded last year that need to be fully funded for a full year in 2020. The base adjustments also include reversals of a one-time funding provided in 2019. Included in these reversals is $7.5 million in one-time contributions to the housing reserve. Next, we identify the costs to maintain the services that we are already providing. Labor costs are the largest increase overall. Inflation on materials and contracts is budgeted at $17.3 million. This includes inflation on goods and services, including utilities. This amount also includes the inflationary increases to community grants of 2% and the full subsidy for the Equifair, Equipass, and Community Pass. Per the directions report that was approved by Council, we are increasing the contribution to capital and transit by $9.8 million to make up for the elimination of the doubling of the provincial gas tax. The inflationary increase for capital renewal funding is the contribution to capital to keep up with inflation and ensure that we are not losing ground in terms of what is needed for the capital spending. The increase is based on the most recently published infrastructure CPI from 2018, which is 5.8%. $2.3 million is proposed to be added to the tax stabilization reserve to increase the balance, which is currently below the approved minimum target. The costs of growth in 2020 are $24.9 million. $1.5 million is added to the winter maintenance budget to maintain the approximately 200 linear kilometers of new roads and 50 linear kilometers of sidewalks being added in 2020. An amount of $1.5 million
is added to the winter budget in order to take into account the new roads, and including 50 linear kilometers of sidewalk added in 2020.
The Community and Social Services budget to cover the cost of the growth in the number of Equipass and Community Pass users. $1.1 million is included for an additional 14 paramedics. There's an additional $1.4 million for solid waste for growth in the number of households for curbside and multi-residential waste pickup. The $1 million for traffic services includes 10 additional school crossing guards and 14 additional red light cameras. There's $5.7 million for the additional police officers and support staff at police services. As per the long-range financial plan, there's an additional $1 million contribution to capital for renewal of assets, taking into account growth of the asset base. The $9.5 million for transit includes $2 million for paratranspo to address increased customer needs and $7.5 million to support increased service hours for bus operations. There's $3.6 million in Ottawa public health growth due to new programs such as cannabis legalization, Indigenous health, and the Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program, all of which are provincially funded. This slide summarizes the two key service initiatives and savings included in the budget. The police services savings of $2.2 million relates to the integration of back office functions and optimization of operational processes. And public health reductions of $1.3 million comes from the optimization of operational processes, administrative and procurement inefficiencies, and reductions in advertising costs. The increase in revenue is projected to be $16.5 million and is based on assumption that water consumption will remain at 81.4 million cubic meters. Like the tax budget, the rate budget has to be balanced. This additional revenue is set to recover the additional costs of delivering these services. The increase of $4.1 million to maintain operations is primarily for projected labor contract settlements, increments, and increases in the cost of the benefits. L'augmentation de 4,1 millions de dollars liée au maintien des activités concernant principalement les augmentations des règlements de contrat de travail, hausse de paye et coûts de bénéfices. The capital contribution is increasing by $12.4 million for all services in total, which is in line with the long-range financial plan for rate-supported capital. Because this is such a capital-intensive service, the most significant increase is in the contribution to capital. We will now look at the capital budgets. The capital budget reflects various plans approved by Council, including Transportation Master Plan, Infrastructure Master Plan, the Development Charges Background Study, and the LRFP 5. That assessed the state of the repair of all the capital assets and recommended a plan for closing the infrastructure funding gap. These plans have all been incorporated in the proposed capital budget for 2020. The one-time federal gas tax funding of $58 million received in 2019 will be allocated to infrastructure renewal over the next 3 years, and the $9.8 million previously approved to address the infrastructure gap will be redirected to transit. Debt is used in this budget within the limits established by Council. Debt servicing is forecasted to be 4.2% of own source revenues on the tax side and 13% on the rate side for 2020. The proposed capital budget in 2020 totals $813 million. As mentioned earlier, this budget reflects the recommendations from the long-range financial plans for tax and rate, increasing contributions to capital to reduce the infrastructure gap. The largest capital investments are being made in roads and pipes, with 20% going to water, wastewater, and stormwater services, 20% for integrated road projects, and 18% for transportation services, which is primarily roads. Transit service capital projects represent 17.8% of the budget, and all other tax-supported services make up the 18.6% of the budget. The proposed $813 million capital budget is funded from a variety of sources, but primarily with cash. The reserves portion, which is cash, is funded from contributions to capital on both the tax and rate side. This makes up 68.5% of the funding for capital. There's also development charge, cash, and debt to fund growth projects, and in total there's $118.3 million in new debt authority that is required to fund the proposed 2020 capital program. This slide shows the percentage of the capital program used for renewal, growth, and regulatory or service enhancements initiatives, tax and rate combined. Reflecting prior council's direction to maintain assets in a state of good repair, 72% of the $813 million is for renewal, 22% for growth, and 6% for regulatory and service enhancements. This slide provides a forecast of the 2020 year-end reserve balances. Based on current forecasts and input from the draft 2020 operating and capital budget, operating reserve funds are projected to increase slightly, and capital reserves are projected to decrease, reflecting the increased investment in infrastructure. So committee, board, and commission budget meetings are scheduled throughout November and December. Council will meet on December 11th to consider the draft budget and any recommendations stemming from the budget meetings, and then it is at that point that the budget will be adopted. In conclusion, Mr. Mayor, I want to offer my thanks to senior management and staff that have supported this budget process, and in particular, finance staff for their hard work and dedication throughout the year, and most particularly at budget time. I would also like to offer a special thanks to Marion for her guidance and leadership throughout the budget process. She stayed for one more budget cycle when we needed her the most, and for that we are very grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So we're now going to hold our questions and to staff, and we'll go and Committee of Adjustment, Comité de Dérogation, estimates for 2020, received. Crime Prevention Ottawa, 2020 draft budget, received. Ottawa Police Service Board, ask Acting Chair Sandy Smallwood and Chief Slowly and CAO Jeff Letourneau to come to the table. And this is Chief Slowly's first budget, so go easy on him, okay? Just this one time, Chief. And we want to thank Chair Smallwood, who's standing in for our colleague, Councillor Deans, who I hope she's not watching on TV, but if she is, hello, Diane. So Chair Smallwood, if you'd like to open the presentation, and just to remind members of Council, these are to be, if you have any questions of technical or very high in nature, don't get into the weeds, because there's a whole public consultation process for the police that they outlined today at their Police Services Board meeting. So Chair Smallwood, the floor is yours. Bienvenue, welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, as you can see, there's a group of new faces before you here today. As the Mayor mentioned, I'm Acting Chair, filling in on behalf of Councillor Deans while she's away on a medical leave of absence. I'm joined by our new police chief, Peter Slowly, who's 8 days into the job, as well as our new CAO, Jeff Letourneau. The timing of their start dates and the budget cycle gave the board a real opportunity to test their skills, a trial by fire, if you will. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Deputy Chief Steve Bell, who I believe is here, who served as interim chief up until the 28th of October, and who helped lead much of the budget work that culminated in what you see today. There are also many other members of the OPS staff that contributed to this budget, and I wish to thank them for their hard work as well.
Finally, I'd like to thank City Treasurer Marianne Similuk for her efforts in supporting us, particularly with the work of the back office transformation. Speaking on behalf of the board, I think Council will see a budget that reflects the true cost of the combined pressures and solutions identified for the Ottawa Police Service for 2020. The budget is also a reflection of the strategic direction the board gave to the service, which was based on the feedback we heard through the community consultation we conducted. And I think you'll see on the slide there some of the items, and I would particularly point out supporting our members with respect to member wellness, which the board has identified as being extremely important. Also, advancing community policing, modernizing the work environment, and making meaningful progress on equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI. That consultation included many of the councillors here today and many of your constituents, so thank you for that input. The budget reflects the council recommended police tax increase of 3%, plus an assessment growth assumption of 1.5%, totaling 4.5%. The board will be welcoming delegates to speak on the budget at our upcoming Finance and Audit Committee meeting on the 14th of November at 10 a.m. in the Colonel By Room. Final consideration of the budget by the board will occur at our monthly meeting on Monday, November 25th. I will now ask Chief Slowly and CEO Letourneau to walk you through some of the highlights.
Merci beaucoup, Chair Smallwood. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you for your kind welcome and your words earlier on. I was paying close attention to your budget, sir. It gave me a chance to get further educated about the realities and challenges and amazing strengths of the city. I was very glad to hear about the extra money going towards snow clearing. My furniture arrives tomorrow on a truck from Toronto, and my family comes in on Friday. I understand there's some snow coming in overnight, so I'm quite sure the roads will be clear for all to arrive safely. Speaking of safety, I'm just going to give a quick overview of Ottawa's landscape. Of course, all of you in the room are much more familiar with these realities than I am, but I will just provide the context. It'll give a sense of direction around what Jeff will be speaking about shortly after. Increasing demographic diversity, along with more marginalized, underserved communities who are experiencing more complex social justice needs. Not only does it put a tax on the efforts and energies of our residents, but also on the efforts of our officers and our civilian members trying to support those needs. There's an increasing sophistication amongst a wide variety of threat actors, some of who operate here locally, many of who increasingly operate internationally. These threat actors have access to technology with very few limitations in terms of how they apply it. On the other side of it, we have increasing opportunities to utilize technology to advance safety and service within this city. Of course, they all come with additional privacy, human rights, and cybersecurity needs. So while the technology is there, the ability to use it, how or if we should use it, are also challenges for us. It's an extremely large geography, and although I've had the opportunity to travel to many parts of this city, I haven't yet had a chance to see all of it. 2,796 square kilometers, over 83 kilometers wide, comprised of 80% rural and 20% urban, means for the first time in my policing time, I simply can't have a one-size-fits-all for our dense urban environment, and the challenges of providing effective and customized services with a centralized, coordinated manner are on our plate as well. The last point is decreasing police to population ratio, as opposed to a 12% population growth over the last several years. It's an interesting statistic, and we explored it a bit earlier on with the board. It's one that I want to keep a close eye on, but there are other KPIs and indicators that we're going to bring to bear in future budgets. I'll just leave that said for now, but the pressure on our members to serve a growing population will be offset to some degree in this budget, and we'll bring forward future thoughts around that. I'm going to very quickly run through what I will call the operational priorities and organizational priorities. First of all, from an operational standpoint, we're going to be advancing neighborhood policing and community partnerships. I've said before on a few occasions, people and partnerships are at the core of the policing mandate I'll bring forward. We've got to put our people in the best position to serve and protect, and then put them into coordinated problem-solving partnerships within all of our communities across the city. It will improve crime prevention. It'll improve public trust. It'll advance community safety and well-being, as well as make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are at the heart of everything that we do. I'll just touch on a couple of things very quickly. If we drive down crime, but we don't drive up trust, that will be a failure as well. We can have amazing crime suppression programs that put criminals in jail and turn the stats in our favor. But if at the end of the day we've disrupted communities so much by those activities that their trust and confidence in local police and the city as a whole has gone down, we'll have longer-term problems that will come in. And so those are two important factors we'll keep an eye on. Community and safety well-being, these are not normally associated to policing, but they're now mandated responsibilities of every municipality and regional government. It means that we're all going to be working together differently and better going forward. These are early days, and no one's got a perfect roadmap for this, but I do believe from the very little I know about the city and the men and women in my police service that we have the ability and potential to do some unique things here and really lead the charge on this across the province. I'm looking forward to working with many of the general managers across the table and seeing how we can combine our resources to create differentiated and better results for all citizens in the city. We're going to be using evidence-based, intelligence-led strategies to build capacity to suppress, investigate, and prosecute offenders involved in gun, gang, and drug-related street violence. While I believe very strongly in prevention as the first and most important aspect of policing, there are some people that simply need to go to jail because they prey on the most vulnerable members of our society. And I will make sure that our officers are in the best place and best positioned to effect those arrests and get the right dispositions through the court system. Improving service and safety to underserved and sometimes, quite frankly, over-policed demographic communities. And by over-policing, I want to be very careful in saying that. Our officers go out with great intentions to provide the best services. But sometimes those intentions produce unintended outcomes. And we must be always mindful of that and make adjustments as soon as possible. Underserved demographic communities include our Indigenous communities, women, racialized, elderly, youth, as well as persons with mental health and addictions. I've been greatly welcomed by our Indigenous communities here. In fact, I was sworn in last week by a member of our Indigenous community who is also a former member of the OPS. I was greatly honored by that opportunity. And I will tell you that I have strong and amazingly wise women inside my organization who have given me great advice. And equally, I've met strong and amazingly wise women across this city, aunties, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, who've all come forward and given me great insights on how to deliver the best services possible. I'll pivot over to our organizational priorities. We are going to invest significantly more in our members' wellness, in their morale, in their ability to be motivated, healthy physically and mentally, to be safe in their duties. We're also going to be effectively addressing misconduct, workplace harassment, and any other unethical conduct going on. I will tell you, it has been a unique experience for me in my first week here. While I've worked in many different organizations, public and private, I have a sense within this organization of great emotion. Positive emotion, meaning there's a change going on, there's a new sense of approach to how we do business within the Ottawa Police Service. But there is also an underlying tension emotion. It's been pent up for a number of years. I'm not going to point any fingers backwards, I'm going to point forwards. We will make a significant investment in our members to make sure their morale and their mental health and their emotional state is at the highest level so they can go out into our many diverse and dynamic communities and provide the most ethical and effective and equitable services possible. The money we spend, every dollar we spend on our members' wellness will be one of the best returns on investment that we have. We're going to improve our human resources and talent processes to better recruit, hire, coach, train, develop and deploy our members to achieve improved capacity, diversity and equity in all areas and at all ranks of the OPS. We're going to more effectively employ evidence-based, agile, data-driven strategies to advance our modernization strategies, improve our overall performance, reduce risk, and demonstrate true financial and social return on the investment. I think we've heard a lot about the financial piece here today. And I'd encourage everyone to believe strongly that the social return on investment is equally important to me and the members of my command as it is to the board that oversees us. And so the budget highlights that I'd like to touch on now. Obviously, we're going to maintain but also enhance our service delivery. We're going to continue our sworn staffing growth plan. I'll just take a moment. I will tell you, Mayor and Council, I have almost doubled the capacity in HR talent within the Ottawa Police Service today because, as you know, it is Take Our Kids to Work Day today. And I've seen many 12, 13, 14-year-old kids walking around the hallways. They're working actively on a wide variety of activities, and you'll see tremendous results as a result of the 8-hour investment of that talent into the organization. However, that talent will not stay with us for much more than 24 hours. What we will do with the budget that we've requested is that we will advance our community policing strategies, and particularly we'll implement 2 new additional neighborhood resource teams within our most challenged communities. We will advance our outreach and recruiting by an investment of additional bodies, as well as our community development, particularly focused on driving equity, diversity, and inclusion outcomes. And as I mentioned before, we will not take our eyes off the criminal element, particularly those that commit brazen acts within our communities and victimize our most vulnerable. 2 additional guns and gangs officers funded by provincial grants will be available to advance our investigative capabilities. There'll be investments in equity, diversity, inclusion, as well as to put forward a better ability for us to build trust in our communities. And finally, we're going to better equip and support our members. I mentioned earlier on, we're going to fix our house and heal our members. Member wellness that I talked about will be at the top of that list in terms of investment dollars, as well as advancing the modernization roadmap, improving our facilities strategic plan, and ultimately advancing our fleet. At this point, I will turn over the microphone to Jeff Letourneau, who will drive into the details of the budget. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chief. The budget includes a $12.7 million operating requirement increase, which is funded by 1.5% assessment growth, along with a 3% increase in the police tax rate, which is in line with the board's direction and the recommendation from council. The operating requirement increase breaks down as follows. Maintaining existing service levels creates an incremental requirement of $10.1 million. Staffing costs make up the majority of this increase. Other drivers of this line are inflation on materials and supplies, contributions to reserve for fleet replacement and facilities, and also included in this line item is $1.3 million in red light camera funding, along with $2.4 million in one-time funding from the city. This one-time funding is enabled by the operating surplus of $2.4 million the service is forecasting for 2019. The 30-officer growth plan creates a $4.4 million requirement. This includes the compensation costs of officers as they are hired over the course of the year, along with the cost of uniforms, equipment, vehicles, and training to equip them. Also included is the annualized compensation costs of the growth officers hired in 2019. The budget includes a pay-as-you-go reserve contribution increase of $1.3 million to fund the modernization roadmap, partially offset by $800,000 in operating expense savings from the program for a net increase of $500,000. $2.2 million in efficiencies and savings are included in this budget. These efficiencies were achieved through the back office integration initiative as directed by the board during the 2019 budget process. They were achieved through internal administrative service improvements and realignments and working with the city to better leverage administrative services, processes, and technology. And finally, user fees have been adjusted $100,000 to keep pace with inflation and in line with the board's policy. Moving on to capital. The OPS capital budget aims to provide an adequate capital envelope to ensure that assets such as fleet, facilities, and information technology are replaced as required. For 2020, the draft capital budget request is $35 million. The budget breaks down into the following 3 categories. Renewal of assets totals $11 million and consists of investments in fleet replacement, IT infrastructure and telecom, and facilities lifecycle. Growth investments total $17 million and includes the final amount for the construction of the south building. Strategic initiatives total $6.9 million and include investments to fund the modernization roadmap, facility and security initiatives, along with the cost to support the sworn officer growth. The 2020 capital budget will be funded almost evenly from a split of pay-as-you-go reserve contributions and debt. This concludes our presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would be happy to take any questions at this time.
Okay, so just a reminder, these are not getting into the weeds of the budget. There's another time for that. So Councillor El-Shantiri on high level or technical or
I promise I won't go to the weed on this budget, sir. First of all, congratulations on your budget, and Chief, welcome to the City of Ottawa. Mr. Letourneau, I heard more than once you talk about the modernization roadmap. Can you, I mean, and in the past we had quite a bit on offer from the city to help with the back office. Is that commitment still exist, and are you still working with the city on a back office or soft costs?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, we are continuing to work with the city. We are partnering with the city on their SAP modernization program, and we've redirected 2 of the streams in the OPS modernization roadmap to work with the city on the human resources side as well as on the asset management side.
Because I didn't see anything about the IT roadmap. Does that mean this item been on hold now, so you can work with the treasurer and the city staff to move forward with the new IT roadmap?
There still is a funding item included in this budget for our IT roadmap.
Okay.
It's mainly focused more on operational technology. So we're implementing technology in the vehicles, digital evidence management technology, as well as information management and analytics technology. Those are continuing to be managed on the OPS side. We're working with the city currently on the HR, the asset management side, and we'll be exploring how we can work more closely with the city on some of our other IT initiatives.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again for the presentation. Just on process, you had mentioned, I think it's the Finance and Audit Committee meeting meets on the 14th of November. I'd like to submit some questions in advance of that committee meeting just to make them available and get some answers before that committee. Who do I filter those questions to?
If you direct them to the board, then we can make sure they go to the right party.
Okay, and I don't expect full answers by the committee meeting, but I want to have some information in advance just to add to my questions.
That'd be much appreciated.
Can you just remind us what that email address is? Is there a generic?
Do you have Krista's? If you send it directly to Krista, then she can.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Engler on process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very quick comment. Chief, you may or may not be aware I may have been a little bit difficult about the police budget last year. And I see Deputy Chief Bell up in the audience, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank him for the work that he did, because carrying the service through the last year or so, coming up with the plan that you've come up with, and even coming up with a surplus at the end of the year is far more than I could have imagined. So a big thank you to everybody at the service, Jeff, of course, included for the work that you've done over the last year. It's very impressive. Thank you for that.
So received and tabled. Great. Thank you very much, Chief, Chair, Director General. Ottawa Public Library Board, our friend Councillor Tierney has lots on his plate with the Library Board, and Danielle MacDonald, our CEO. And again, colleagues, process technical or high-level questions, and we'll let them get settled. I'm interested in the library. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and my council colleagues. I want to say that the Ottawa Public Library is pleased. I'm very pleased to be accompanied by our very wonderful CEO, Danielle MacDonald, today as we present the Ottawa Public Library's draft 2019 budget. 2019 was outstanding for the OPL. We welcome our new members to the board. We've also approved our new strategic plan for 2020. And our colleagues in the city, we advanced the Public Library, Ottawa Public Library and Library Archives Canada Joint Facility Project with, you're quite correct, a very extensive public engagement process on the new design of the facility. At this point, I'll turn the presentation over to our CEO, Danielle MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Is that working? The Ottawa Public Library's draft 2020 budget sees an increase of $1.775 million as allocated by Ottawa City Council in September, plus an additional $810,000 for city-related life cycle and accessibility expenditures. La bibliothèque a donc une enveloppe budgétaire de 50.
The budget envelope is therefore $52.954 million.
So the library's budget in sum has a total budget envelope of just under $53 million. Notre budget sera dépensé.
Our budget will be spent based on the following categories.
Financial adjustments required from the 2019 budget. The second category pertains to our mandatory costs, the biggest of which, of course, is compensation. And also included in this funding will be the addition of Friday morning hours at the Ruthie Dickinson branch to bring the service to the Southwest community in line with other areas across the East, West, Central, and Southeast. And this also includes the addition of 1 FTE. The third concerns strategic items, and that will be security costs for the existing Rideau branch. Also, we will continue to fund and support library collections, and there will be one-time funding for staff to support the automated scheduling system and funding for the maintenance of the musical instrument collection, which we will be expanding in the East and Southeast communities tomorrow. And the final category that you see here will consist of a small transfer that we will put to the OPL reserves. On the capital side, OPL expects to spend $2.882 million in 2020, and a large portion of this amount will go towards maintaining our facilities and assets, including addressing a deficiency at the branch in the Metcalfe Village. The bulk of funding will be spent on growth, and this includes advancing funds for the branch serving Riverside South community, as well as the development of long-term facilities master plan. In both cases, OPL's capital contribution is required to access current DC funds. In terms of user fees, OPL applies fees to various items, and in 2020, we recommend maintaining the status quo in light of changes that we have had previously. In the coming year, however, staff will develop guidelines regarding user fees and bring these forward. Finally, based on the current projections and the 2020 budget recommendation, we will be adding $175,000 to the library reserve, and the approximate reserve balance will then be just over $3 million.
In summary, the budget that we presented today does meet the target as requested by Council for the library.
The draft budget is designed to balance various OPL needs, including alignment with our new strategic plan, capitalization on DC funding during this uncertain time, and maintaining operations with some enhancements around collections and hours, and also maintaining the OPL's reserve account. That concludes my presentation. Merci.
And so thank you very much, Danielle, for that. And I did want to note one quick thing. The musical lending library that we originally started off with Sarah McLaughlin, I think it was one of the only times I've seen the mayor not speak. He was so excited to see Sarah McLaughlin. Is now expanded into 2 musical lending libraries. One at tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Matt Luloff, Councillor Luloff's going to let me play the triangle, I think. But the other one for the Greenboro branch in Councillor Dean's ward, we certainly could press ahead tomorrow, but we're going to wait till she recovers and gets strong again, and when she comes back, we're going to launch that library with lots of sound. So on that, Mr. Mayor, that's our draft budget. Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank both you, Chair Tierney and Ms. McDonald, for working in such a collaborative fashion with the city staff, and for the great work you're doing in both consulting and shepherding the new central branch through many different hoops that you have to go through. It's been very, very much appreciated. Councillor DeRuse on process at high level.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the chair and Max McDonald for giving us a great presentation, and we really appreciate giving attention on the Metcalf branch, because I know that it's been an emergency and it's well used by the community, but I want to thank you and your staff for addressing the issue and the emergency of that branch. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. So received and tabled. Agreed. Next is our colleague Keith Eglai, the chair of the Ottawa Public Health Board. Dr. Etches is out of town on city business, and Keith will be joined by Lou Flaboria, Manager of Performance Corporate Services, and Esther Haddam, Director of Health Promotion and Chief Nursing Officer. And so Councillor Eglai, where is Councillor? Oh, there he is, right there. Councillor Eglai, welcome, and thank you for your good work on the board, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And as you indicated, Dr. Etches would like to have been here, but she's doing good service for the city in Toronto today. As chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, I'm very pleased to be presenting the Ottawa Board of Health's 2020 draft operating budget for tabling at Council today. Il me fait plaisir de présenter le budget provisoire 2020 pour santé publique Ottawa. I am joined today by Lou Flaboria, Ottawa's Public Health Manager, Performance and Corporate Services, and by Esther Mogadam, Director of Health Promotion and Chief Nursing Officer. We are presenting a balanced budget of $73.7 million today, which includes city support costs of approximately $9 million. It aligns with the city guidelines for budget development and includes an increase of $475,000. Le budget est conforme aux lignes directrices de la Ville et comprend une augmentation de $475 000. It also assumes a 70% provincial, 30% municipal funding formula for mandatory programs, with some exceptions. All new growth initiatives totaling $3.6 million are provincially funded at 100%. Efficiencies of $1.4 million are required in order to balance the overall budget. Funding for public health services consists of several categories. Cost-shared funds are used to deliver programs to adhere to the Ontario Public Health Standards as they relate to the Health Protection and Promotion Act, and they represent the majority of the OPH budget. For 2020, the cost-shared formula will be 70% provincial, 30% municipal. As announced by the province in late August, and in OPH's case, we are already meeting that funding ratio. The next largest envelope is 100% provincially funded programs, which includes Healthy Babies, Healthy Children, and several new programs such as the Ontario Seniors Dental Program, Cannabis, Indigenous Health, and various other programs that round out that category. Next are 100% city-funded programs such as mental health, substance use, and injury prevention, and school-based outreach. Adult dental expenses are recovered from community and social services, and revenue is also generated through miscellaneous fees and services, which include OHIP billing, immunization, contraceptive, medical supplies, inspection searches, and food handler training. This slide provides a high-level summary of the 2020 base budget changes. Cette diapo présente un résumé des changements au budget de base pour 2020. In order to maintain existing services, the budget includes a provision of $1.2 million for the future negotiation of collective agreements. Next are new growth programs such as the Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program for $2.76 million, additional Indigenous health funding of $298,000, and cannabis program support and enforcement of $500,000. All three of these new programs will be 100% provincially funded. The final two items include the reduction of funding for the supervised consumption sites of $885,000 and efficiencies of $1.355 million in order to balance the budget. The revenue changes include a $475,000 funding increase from the city, new provincial funding of $3.56 million for growth initiatives outlined above, a reduction of $630,000, which was requested to cover the provincial portion of the 2% cost of living compensation increase assumed in the 2019 budget that was not approved, and finally an adjustment for the discontinuation of the funding for the supervised consumption services. In summary, we are presenting a budget that considers the latest information provided by the provincial government, includes new programming for emerging areas, and requires reductions to existing resources in order to balance the budget. That concludes my presentation. We'd be happy to answer any question from members of council.
Okay, any high-level questions to Chair Eglai? Thank you. So received and tabled. Agreed. Okay, so at this point, if anyone has any high-level questions for the Treasurer. Any high-level questions for the Treasurer? Okay. Innovative Client Services Department, Directeur Général des Services, FTE analysis, received. 2020 Municipal Vehicle and Equipment Plan, information supplemental of the budget estimates, Plan des véhicules et de l'équipement, received. And receive and table number 1 as well. Agreed? Next on page 7, Innovative Client Services Department, proposed 2019-2022 term of council priorities. City Manager has a brief presentation that I know Councillor McKenney wants to hear, the long version. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Kanalakis, the floor is yours. We're on the proposed 2019-2022. Just to remind people, these are just being tabled now, and then we go out for consultation. So, Mr. City Manager, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've only got a 2-hour presentation, so I'll work through it very quickly. And I know everybody wants to hear about a strategic plan, but it is, as you mentioned during your introduction, your budget speech, it is one of those unique times every 4 years where Council has an opportunity to set its priorities for the term and beyond and align it with the budget. And I want to start by saying that what I'm presenting here today are going to be your priorities, but your priorities are going to be integrated into every department and every service. And our performance measures and our outcomes are what we're going to use to report back to Council and to hold our senior leadership team and our managers accountable for their performance over the term of Council. So we're going to move from here, once the budget is passed and you set your priorities, to in fact integrate these priorities into every department right down to the lowest level in terms of what their contribution is to achieve these priorities. As you recall, we tabled the proposed process for the 2019-22 term of Council priorities at September 10th FEDCO meeting, along with the draft 20 budget directions for an opportunity that councillors could have to consult with residents in their ward consultations. Today, the proposed priorities are being referred to the standing committees of Council, the Information Technology Subcommittee, and the Transit Commission for consideration. And you'll also have received the last term of Council 2015 to 2018 City Balance Scorecard Results Summary, which is our closeout report for the last term of Council, where we've achieved 95% of the actions that were approved by Council 5 years ago. As I mentioned at the FEDCO meeting in September, I want to emphasize this isn't city staff's priorities. Staff did the advanced work to be able to give Council a framework to discuss your priorities in conjunction with the budget for your term of Council that you've been elected for. Again, this is our best foot forward in terms of what we believe are the things that Council should be considering for this term. And I'd like to thank Mark Rennie de Contre, Kendall Gibbons, and Sammy, who's over there on the machine, who have worked diligently to support the senior leadership team and our departments through this process. We worked on this in 2018, and the proposed priorities are a culmination of a number of key inputs that I shared with you. 15 months of extensive engagement with senior management, staff, and external thought leaders, data and research on global trends in similar and mid-sized cities and their implications, trends on evolving service expectations of the community and how technology has a role in that, trends and issues facing the workplace, scenario-based studies that identify key factors that will shape Ottawa over the next 100 years and help position us as a resilient and adaptable city, We looked at last term's priorities, which continue into this term, such as LRT, affordable housing, reducing GHG emissions, and improving service delivery. And we considered the common priorities identified by the Mayor and Council during your election run in 2018. Finally, we considered Council-approved long-term plans, such as the official plan, transportation master plan, infrastructure master plan, and the long-range financial plans that were developed through robust community consultation. At the end, we have three themes: our city, our service, and our people. That's how we've chose to put the framework on the left column around the strategic plan. And under these themes, we have 7 draft priorities that have been identified and proposed with outcomes and concrete actions for each. The priorities aim to strike a balance between spending on existing services and investing for future growth. They've been prepared within Council's approved fiscal framework and are achievable within the draft 2020 budget through our capital and operating budgets. A lot of hard work, extensive consultation, thorough research has gone into building what I believe to be is a very progressive plan that positions Ottawa for continued growth, prosperity, and livability. And once approved, this plan will be our anchor and roadmap to inform decision-making, align resources, guide our work moving forward, and building our budgets for the rest of term of Council. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from members of Council? Oh. Councillor Eglai.
Yes, Mr. Kanalakis. I was pleased to see the work that you've done and the ideas or platforms that you set out. And I don't want to spend a lot of time today because I know we have a busy day and we have other meetings to get to, but perhaps between now and when this goes for approval, you and I could sit down and have a chat, because I look at a couple of the topics or the platforms that you're suggesting, environmental stewardship, for example, and you talk about growing a healthy, beautiful, and vibrant city. Another one, a thriving community, refers to the social and physical well-being. But when I go through the organizations or the departments flagged for oversight, and I don't see health. I don't see public health. So I'd like to sit down and better understand the role that public health is going to, clearly it is going to play a role in at least 2 of these that I've pointed out. And if we could perhaps set something up over the next couple of weeks and maybe have a chat about how that works and what the connection's going to be.
Mr. Chair, it's a great point in terms of the boards and how they have an impact or a contribution towards the strategic plan. We can't set the direction because there's a different governance structure, in particular for public health and police and library, for instance. But we do refer this strategic plan, once it's approved, to the boards for their consideration and aligning their strategic plan and contributing to the overall city strategic plan of Council. So I'd be happy to meet with you separately to discuss how that may happen.
Perfect. I appreciate that very much.
Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just a point of clarification. Is it the intent of the standing committees to host an opportunity over the next month, an agenda lines focused on the term of Council priorities?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. The standing committees will be reviewing their portion of the strategic plan in conjunction with their budget, and people can speak to it. You can add, remove, make recommendations to committee of the whole.
So our standing committees over the next month are going to be quite packed. In addition to our budget deliberations, members of the public can come down and address budget and or the term of Council priorities. So I appreciate the clarification.
Okay. And so, received and tabled. Thank you, Mr. Kanalakis. Councillor Fleury, postponements and deferrals. You have a motion to defer the issue of rat complaints.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and it is seconded by you, and thank you for that. Be it resolved that the item be deferred to the next regular council meeting, scheduled to be November 27th. I'll work with your office and management to update the motion.
Okay, on deferral. Carried, adopté. Merci. Committee reports, rapport des comités, Audit Committee report number 5. Received. Planning Committee report number 15, rapport numéro 15 du Comité de l'Urbanisme regarding Section 45 of the Planning Act in respect to 541 and 545 Rideau Street. Chair Harder tells me this is a technical amendment. Carried. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? Councillor Fleury would like to remove item B. Go ahead.
I can speak to it, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, speak to it now.
So just for the record, I spoke at Built Heritage Subcommittee relating to this application. There are two components that I am concerned as part of the submission. The heritage staff were very clear as the work that needed to be done to reflect materials and Cornish styles that were within the HCD zones, but also making an important point that to me the projection that's proposed on one of the site that should be a criteria within the HCD zone. So I'm happy that staff will be reviewing the HCD zones for Lower Town and Byron Market in the coming year, but I will on the anomaly, if you will, of the projection, I will vote against that item.
On the report, carried. Adopté. Anything else off the bulk consent agenda? No. Okay, motion to adopt reports. Motion portant adoption de rapport. Councillor. Yes, we carried the bulk consent. And Councillor Gower, and seconded by Councillor Luloff, please.
That the report from the Director of Human Resources entitled FTE Analysis Report Information Supplemental to the Budget Estimates, the report from the Director of Fleet Services entitled 2020 Municipal Vehicle and Equipment Plan Information Supplemental to the Budget Estimates, Item 8 of Community and Protective Services Committee Report 7, Audit Committee Report 5, Built Heritage Subcommittee Report 6, Planning Committee Report 14, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of October 23rd, 2019, be received and adopted as amended.
And the clerk has reminded us that the rodent issue is off that list now. So on the motion, thank you. Carried. Motions requiring suspensions of the rules of procedure. Motion by myself, seconded by Councillor El Shantiri with respect to the appointment of Councillor Matt Luloff as liaison for veteran and military issues, as obviously this week is Veterans Affairs Week. On suspension, carried. I don't know if you want it to. Do you want me to read out the full motion? Are people comfortable with it? I can just summarize what I said in the budget speech and thank Councillor Luloff, who's obviously served his community and his country overseas. And last night, Councillor Dudas and El Shantiri and Mian and I were representing the city at this beautiful tribute, candlelight tribute to the veterans at the War Museum, which is always a highlight of the year, really, to see these wonderful young people interact with veterans. And we named a street that's going to be in Councillor Meehan's ward, a beautiful video of the corporal that passed away, and his family was there, and we're going to honor him. And this is, most people don't realize, but the largest military presence in Canada is not in Gagetown or Cold Lake, it's Ottawa, in terms of the number of members, active members of the armed forces. So I'd encourage you to support this, seconded by my colleague, Councillor El Shantiri. Carried? Carried, and thank you, Councillor Luloff. We have a second motion that requires suspension of the rules of procedure with respect to Tarion, reform and transforming and modernizing the delivery of Ontario's building code services because of a deadline to consult with the province. On suspension, carried. Councillor McKenney, seconded by Councillor Blais. That's a rare combination, so this is great.
Thank you. Yes, it is. And it's in support of something that our provincial government is undertaking, so.
That's even weirder.
I can read out the entire motion. It's essentially to, just so that the city officially states its support for the province's initiative to improve building code services and the guidelines that were set out in their backgrounder. Would people like me to read it all? I can. It's.
I think it's been circulated. It's on the screen. It's
it is, yeah.
A very good initiative to try to bring greater consumer protection to.
Yeah, so I'll do the therefore be it resolved,
Sure.
and I'll just give a quick explanation as to why I, felt this was important at this time. Therefore be it resolved that Ottawa City Council officially states its support on the provincial initiative to improve building code services for better outcomes for home quality in Ottawa through the Tarion reform and transforming and modernizing the delivery of Ontario's building code services plan, and more specifically supports the guidelines set forth in the backgrounder from February 20th, 2019, which are strengthening Tarion's governance and oversight, establishing a separate regulator for new home builds, conduct multi-provider insurance model analysis, better informing consumers buying pre-construction condominiums. And we've heard, in the news lately, issues with Tarion, any part of the city where we're getting new builds, certainly in the ward that I represent. I hear from residents that they're not pleased often with the outcome of their build and the outcome of their back and forth with Tarion through their claim process. So I do, the province's, I think it's called Better Building, More Homes, More Choices Act, is about providing more housing, and part of that is to ensure that that new housing, we think about even with Ottawa Community Housing and some of our builds there, we want to make sure that it's good housing and that people get what they pay for. So I thank you for your support.
So on the motion presented by Councillor McKenney, carried, adopté, merci. Our next motion that requires suspension of the rules is by Councillor Fleury, seconded by Councillor King, with respect to a demolition, and there's a timing issue. So on suspension, carried. Councillor Fleury, if you'd like to introduce and explain
Yes,
the
Mr.
motion.
Mayor, yes, thank you for this. This is a property, the building is at 255 Ethel Street. That is a blight of the community. I'll just read the whereases. Their neighborhood's concerns relate to the state of this property, whereas given the dilapidated condition of the building and the community's concern, it would be in public's interest to demolish the building, whereas there is currently no building permit application for a replacement building. Therefore, be it resolved that council approve a demolition control for the existing building on the property upon application of the owners, subject to the following conditions. One, that until the time the construction of the first replacement building, the registered owner shall landscape the property to the satisfaction of the GM of Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. The registered owner shall prohibit the use of the property for other interim uses and maintain the property in accordance with the property standards bylaw. 2, the landscaping of the property shall be finalized in accordance with the conditions established by the GM of Infrastructure and Economic Development. 3, the owner agrees that to the discretion of the General Manager, Planning, Infrastructure, Economic Development, a replacement building must be subsequently completed within the next 2 years from the date of this approval, and in default thereof, the city clerk shall enter in a collector's roll of sum of $5,000 for the residential dwelling to be demolished. 4, the GM of Planning and Infrastructure may impose such other conditions as deem appropriate. 5, the registered owner shall enter in an agreement with the city to include the foregoing conditions and pay all costs associated with this registration of said agreement, and such time as a building permit is issued to redevelop the site and the replacement building is in place, the agreement will become null and void and will be released upon request of the owner. The owner shall pay all costs associated with the release of the agreement. 6, the owner agrees that the demolition permit will not be issued and the building cannot be demolished until such time as the agreement referenced herein has been executed and registered on title. And 7, this approval is considered null and void if the agreement is not executed within 1 month of council's approval or if the building is not demolished prior to the end of the year, December 31st of 2019.
Okay, so on the motion, carried, adopté. Are there any other motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure? Notice the motion for consideration of subsequent meeting. Avis de motion pour examen à réunion subséquente. Conseiller Brockington, appuyé par conseiller Blais, s'il vous plaît. Notice the motion, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a notice of motion with pending infrastructure work coming in Riverward next year on La Rose Avenue, LaPage Avenue, and Larkin Avenue. This is just seeking council's blessing to ensure that once the work is done, some of the non-compliant driveways that exist are put back as is. We've provided similar authorities in other wards this year, and so this simply respects the issues in place on those 3 streets.
Okay, so we'll deal with that at the next council meeting. Are there any other notices of motion for consideration of subsequent meeting? No. Notice of intent from the City Auditor General to table the annual report at the November 26, 2019 meeting of the Audit Committee. Notice of intent from the Integrity Commissioner to submit the 2019 annual report for consideration at the City Council meeting of November 27, 2019. Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Gower, please, seconded by Councillor Luloff.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, be read and passed.
Merci. Sur cette motion adoptée, carried.
Motion carried.
Information bylaw, Councillor Gower and Councillor Luloff, please.
To confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of November 6, 2019.
Carried, adopté. And just for clarification, Councillor El Shantiri was seconding my motion on the military veteran liaison, and he's here now, so with council's agreement, carried? Carried, thank you. Thank you. Confirmation bylaw, Councillor Gower? We've done it, okay. Do we have any written inquiries? No. Adjournment. Meeting adjourned. The Treasurer, Deputy Treasurer, and City Manager, myself, will be available for a budget media conference in my office foyer in 15 minutes. And then I believe Transit Commission, Councillor Hubley, is after that. So meeting adjourned. Motion to adjourn, carried. Merci, thank you.